Hi there, and welcome to another interview. And today I got the fabulous George Goodenough with me, and I want to say hello to George.
Hello, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and I always start with people asking them about their own personal journey. So, George, if you'd like to give us a little bit about your background and your journey, that would be fantastic.
Okay, so I am an ex-soldier. I was in the intelligence corps. I was a linguist analyst in the intelligence corps. Veteran of the first Gulf War, after which I left the army and then went into the world of private security. Managed to keep myself fairly fit with trying to outrun a bad diet until I was about 40, and then it all went horribly wrong. And I spent the next 16 years becoming very, very seriously ill, including a bit of a major nervous breakdown, in which I lost a year of my life, 11 months of my working life anyway, and had to go back to work at a very low level. Continue to gain the weight, continue to become seriously malnourished, as I prefer to call it, rather than metabolically unwell, because it was quite simply malnourishment, until 2022, when I found myself at 21 stone, or 293 pounds for our American friends, with type 2 diabetes, with a British score of 50 and an American score, I think, of 6.7%. A couple of friends of mine had recently died suddenly in their 50s and 60s of a heart attack. I basically realised then that I was the next on the list, unless I did something pretty drastic about it. So on March the 1st of 2022, I had a typical NHS blood test, and I got the results probably a few days later. So it could be exactly 3.5 years since I got those results. The doctor was incredibly unhelpful, incredibly contemptuous of me. I could see it in her eyes. All she did was write a prescription for metformin and statins, sent me out of her office, and basically told me that I had type 2 diabetes. It was going to be chronic and progressive, and that the only way we could manage it was with pharmaceuticals. So I had those pharmaceutical prescriptions clutched in my hand, and as I left her office, so my phone rang, and it was a nurse called Kath Moran, who was a diabetes nurse in the same surgery. She said, has the doctor finished with you, George? I said, yes. She said, come and see me. I wasn't booked in with her, but she let me into her consulting room, shut the door and asked me to sit down. And she basically said, okay, you've got diabetes. Now, what do you eat? So I said, well, I eat properly. I eat pasta, rice, bread. I eat potatoes, vegetables, quite a bit of meat, and so I do like my crisps as well. And she looked at me with kind of not contempt, but almost with pity, but a kindness in her eyes, which I didn't see in the doctor. And she just looked me in the eye and she said, George, all carbs are sugar. Eh? So I said, what, even the savoury ones, the ones that don't taste of sugar? She said, yes, all carbohydrates turn to sugar in your bloodstream. So she said, if you cut out the carbohydrates, you'll find that you will lose weight and you'll probably get rid of type 2 diabetes. She probably said that to about 1 million people before, but with me, she was dealing with a critical thinker rather than somebody who would just go away and ignore her. So I thought this is very simple. And the last words I said to her as I left her office, I said, we can do this. Because it was suddenly a light bulb moment appeared above my head. So I had the prescriptions in my hand. I left her office. I left the surgery. I went and sat at my own kitchen table and put the prescriptions on the table. In about the year 2010, there was a program in this country called the Hairy Bikers. I don't know if you remember it, Steve. King and Dave, I can't remember what his name was now, but they're excellent chaps. And they introduced us through their program to a guy called Professor Roy Taylor from Newcastle University.
Oh, yeah.
And he is one of the modern day pioneers of reversing type 2 diabetes. At the time, or still actually, he believes in the 800 calorie shakes for about 6 weeks, and diabetes goes away. What the Hairy Bikers were doing was then developing a maintenance low carb way of cooking, which still included quite a lot of bread and vegetables, that sort of thing. So the first person I researched was Professor Roy Taylor and the low calorie approach. But I did at the time realise that was probably not going to be sustainable. But because of the various algorithms on Google rather than YouTube at the time, I was introduced to the low carb approach via an American, maybe Healthline, PubMed, one of those. So I researched the low carb, and I went back to work, and I was lucky enough to be working with a guy called Max Bramfitt, who is a bulldozer driver on a building site. And he told me about the ketogenic diet. He recommended fewer than 50 grams of carbs a day. So what conclusion do we draw from that? That a bulldozer driver on a building site is better educated than a doctor. That is the only conclusion I can come to. So I went away, researched the ketogenic diet, and found it very amenable. I stumbled my way through low-carb keto, or I like to think that I was probably 70% plus meat at that time, which puts me in what they call the scientific hypercarnivore range. So I do say that I was carnivore from that moment onwards, a hypercarnivore, not 100% carnivore as some people are, and as I am closer to now. So yeah, I went away and then started eliminating stuff. And I was still eating the ketogenic friendly vegetables such as the leafy greens, got rid of all the grains and all the root vegetables. Was still eating a bit of citrus fruit and that sort of thing, because I didn't understand about the danger of fructose at that time. So yeah, I did very well, and within a few weeks I'd lost quite a lot of weight, and then that continued until August of 2022, when I'd lost about 3 stone, so down from 21 stone to about 18 stone. And I thought, wonder if it's worthwhile having another go with the bloods. So I did, and I think that was. I had my bloods on August the 4th. Now, I had a routine results phone call booked with a guy called Richard, who was my diabetes nurse then, because Kat had left that particular practice. So I had my bloods done on August the 4th. On August the 9th, I got a very urgent phone call from Sandra, who was the head of the diabetes team at the surgery that I then was. And she said, I need to talk to you in a hurry, George. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry to disturb you. I said, what's going on, Sandra? I thought I must have got this horrendously wrong, and she's going to tell me that things have gone really bad. She said, no. She said, don't be worried. She said, I just need to know what you've done. She said, you reversed type 2 diabetes in 5 months and lost 3 stone. How did you do it? So I said, well, I just went away, did the research, and went low carb. Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, they were quite keen. And she said, okay, now I've made this phone call. She said, you obviously don't need to be on prescriptions anymore. And she said, basically, I've made this phone call, so Richard won't be phoning you on the August 22nd now. Anyway, at the appointed time on August 22nd, Richard phoned me and said, George, I'm not supposed to be doing this. But he said, I just need to know, what did you do? So I just told him it was low carb. So that was my first good result on low carb keto. At this time, I'd never, ever heard of the carnivore diet. There wasn't a thing to me. It really wasn't. But then I discovered YouTube as something other than just a music platform. So I then typed in reversing type 2 diabetes, and I came up with the excellent Sarah Holberg video. Reversing type 2 diabetes starts with ignoring the guidelines. 18 minutes and 6 seconds of life-saving material. And of course, what happened then is, because I was looking up low carb keto, then carnivore started appearing. Never heard of it, but the first one which really caught my eye, I remember I sat at a gatehouse in Taunton. I remember exactly where I was when I saw it come up, and it was Woman Eats Only Meat for 13 Years, Dr. Ken Berry and Kelly Hogan. So it kind of fired my imagination. I thought, well, what's the result going to be? So I watched that one. It's about an hour long. And the results were utterly astounding, because, as we know, Kelly was herself morbidly obese with all the problems that went with it. She went carnivore, and she is now one of the healthiest looking ladies in the world, possibly. So that was when I realized that carnivore was a thing. But because I was being so successful on keto, I didn't actually go carnivore at that time. In fact, it probably took me another year before I did. I gradually started eliminating stuff, but the following summer it was quite a decent summer, as I recall, in 23. And we had a lot of barbecues, and I do love my raw onions, and I do love my cucumber, and I do love my tomatoes. So I was still keto friendly, but certainly not carnivore at that time. Although I was heavily meat based, there was really just condiments. And then the last week of August 23, I made my first venture into the international community. In fact, my first venture into the community at all. So basically, I've been going now for 18 months by myself, with only a bit of advice from Max and various other people. And then I discovered Carnivore Soldier, Larry Allhands from Texas. Now, Larry was aiming at veterans such as myself, so I reached out to him and we became friends across the pond. And I gave him his first interview on his series called Mission Carnivore for veterans. I was episode 1 of that. Episode 2 was Anthony Chafee, so I'm quite proud of the fact that I short-headed Anthony to that particular program. During that time, well, I cringe when I think about it now. When I think about some of the rubbish that I was eating, some of the processed meats, and I told him that I was still eating onions, that sort of thing. I said, "Well, I'm doing really well." Now, the following day, Larry gave a feedback video to the world about 5 o'clock in the morning. He said, "Yesterday I interviewed a really good bloke called George Goodenough." He said, "Yeah, George doesn't do things like I would do. He still drinks quite a lot of alcohol, as I was doing at the time. He still eats things like onions and veg." He said, "But," he said, "how can I tell a man he was wrong when he's got such a success rate?" And I thought, "Larry, you are very, very subtly using reverse psychology on me, telling me that I'm wrong." I went away, thought about it, and I thought, yeah, he's right. And it was the end of the summer. It was September the 11th at that time. So I thought, well, there's no more barbecue, so I'll get rid of all the salad stuff. And I went carnivore, or at least fibre-free anyway, because the true carnivore police would say, well, you're still drinking alcohol, you still drink coffee, therefore you can't be a real carnivore. But as I said, I'm quite happy being a hyper-carnivore, or close to being carnivore. The following month, the end of that month, I think, we went for a meal in the local Turkish restaurant. And I'm a great fan of olives. So I had some olives, thinking, oh, they're low carb, aren't they? They're one of the low carb veg. So, oh boy, did I regret it, because the little guys down in the boiler room, the microbiome, had by this time sort of thanked me for getting rid of all the fibre. And the following few hours were not pleasant, shall we say. We won't go into too much details, but I'm sure we've all experienced it. The fibre played havoc with my large intestine and the result. So that was the last time I ate fibre. So that was September of 2023, and I've been pretty much fibre-free ever since. Yeah, so that's really the story. Moving forward to September last year, when I had my latest batch of blood tests. I got them back on October the 9th. I went in, Nurse Abby sat me down and went through the blood tests, said that I was the most spectacular success story when it comes to reversing type 2 diabetes and morbid obesity that she had ever seen. By this time, I should point out that I had gone from 293 pounds, 21 stone. I was probably about 13 stone at that time. And I lost 10 inches off my waist, and my triglycerides were smashed. The usual story when it comes to type 2 diabetes. So she announced the fact that this is my third perfect HbA1c, which was 32. I know you're not a great fan of the HbA1c, but I'd gone from 50 to 32. So she said, you've had 3 perfect blood tests in a row. And so you are now cured of type 2 diabetes. I was still drinking heavily at the time, which is interesting. I was probably drinking about 70 units a week in the form of fairly low carb beer and Carling, about 10 grams a pint. And I was drinking quite a lot of Suave, very dry white wine, which is relatively low carb. When she came, well, the most interesting thing is when she came to the liver function test, she skipped over it. Doctors or nurses always ask, how much do you drink? So I said, aren't you going to ask me that? She said, no, you've got a perfect liver function test. Clearly you're a teetotaler. I said, I'm a heavy drinker, Abby. And she said, and she laughed and thought I was taking the mickey out of her. So I gave her the sincere stare, and I said, no, I still drink 70 units a week. And she just shook her head and said, well, whatever you're doing, you're doing it right. So the key thing there, I think, is A, don't drink alcohol. I've given up now. by 6 months of giving up. But B, alcohol probably has been arrested, tried, convicted, and jailed for the crimes of fructose. Because whilst all this time that I was drinking heavily on alcohol and I got myself a perfect liver function test, fructose had been completely removed from my nutrition. Therefore, yeah, absolutely. For optimal health, stay away from the alcohol. I'm now 6 months alcohol free and feeling a lot better for it. And I've actually lost more weight as well. But yeah, just, just an interesting point that my liver function test came back clean when I was a fairly heavy drinker. One happy result I can say is that Kath Moran moved on from the original surgery I was with, but I was so grateful to her. Absolutely, the gratitude was such that I wanted to say thank you. So I found out where she was. I sent a thank you email to the practice manager, explaining what had happened, and the practice manager got back to me, said, "This is such a wonderful thing. We very rarely hear this gratitude, if you like, from our patients. I will pass this on to Kath." So I was able to actually keep my promise to Kath when I said we can do this. I did it. We did it. And so, yeah, honour was served. So that really is my story. I've carried on 12 months now. I've got my next set of bloods on September the 10th next week. Because as I think I told you this morning, I'm down for surgery on a long-standing inguinal hernia. So the doctor wants me just to get the blood test done again, but I'm very, very confident they're going to come back clean. So that's me up to date now. As I say, I've now dropped from 21 stone to 12 stone, or in other words, 293 pounds or 170 odd. As you saw at the Great British Meetup, my before and after photographs have thrust me into the spotlight, and as much as I'm kind of the poster boy now for the weight loss program, and I very much enjoyed making my speech at the Great British Meetup. So that kind of brings us up to date with my story. So yeah, I'm ready to move on to the next section of this interview, Steve.
That's okay. So you went from, just want to clarify, 293 pounds was your top, was it?
Yeah, 293 pounds, 133 kilograms, or 21 stone.
And what are you now?
The last time, just before I went to America, I weighed in at 12 stone exactly. There would have been an upheaval. I put on 5 pounds again, so I'm about 12 stone 5 now. But I'm getting back into the groove of the very near line diet. So within the next week or so, that 5 pounds will disappear. That was all about disruption, and I found it very stressful with so I think there was a bit of the cortisol involved there as well, to be perfectly honest with you, because the modern day travel, it's been 20 years since I've flown, and just trying to deal with everything online I found very, very stressful. And then my flight back from Riverton in Wyoming got delayed, which meant that I had to get a later flight. So that put me into a massive stress syndrome as well. So almost certainly as you explained to Dave Mack this morning, the cortisol fight or flight almost certainly demanding more glucose. Probably gluconeogenesis kicked in, insulin kicked in, and there's a bit of fat storage going on. But now I'm back in my own little house, eating, back on my routine again. I'm sure that 5 pounds will very rapidly disappear. It's not exactly 5 pounds is neither here nor there. So yeah, perfectly happy.
Yeah, it's amazing when you eat this way how you realise your body composition is much easier to control.
Yes.
Now, one of the things I like about you is you openly say you're not much of a scientist, although you're working on that, but you're more of a historian. But
Absolutely.
I think the history, I'm a big fan of all the things that have gone before, because it explains the big mess we're in now. And you sent me an excellent email with a list of a few things that, you're quite happy to talk about. So I think to keep it nice and broad, we'll start with Ansel Keys and the Minnesota Coronary experiment, which is something I reference occasionally in my Substack. So, I'd love to know your take on that particular researcher and that particular experiment.
Absolutely. First, a note on the science side of things. I am trying to study a bit with Dr. Kiltz. I'm on his coaching course, and I now can actually pronounce the word beta-hydroxybutyrate. But I kind of leave that sort of thing to you and Richard, because you've well and truly occupied that space, so you don't need me treading on your toes. So yeah, let's talk about the history. Ansel Keys, I'm sure most people have heard of him here. Invented the K ration for the troops in the Second World War. Got that completely wrong as well. And then he wanted to make a name for himself. He was a fish biologist, but he was mates with Dr. Paul White, who was Eisenhower's personal doctor. So when Eisenhower had his heart attack in 1955, Ansel Keys saw the opportunity to make a big name for himself. So he picked on saturated fat as being the most likely cause of the heart attack, or not the most likely cause, but what he wanted to be the cause of the heart attack. This was ignoring the fact that Eisenhower smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And as I've just been watching Nina Teicholz to remind myself, at that time, the saturated fat consumption in America was dwindling to virtually nothing, and the consumption of polyunsaturated fatty acids in the form of seed oils was going through the roof. However, Ansel Keys was absolutely determined that he was going to prove that it was saturated fat and cholesterol which was the issue, because he needed to make a name for himself. So what he did was the infamous 7 nation study, 22 nations. Very conveniently picked the 7 nations which fitted the lovely upward line of his graph. Ignored the other 15, I think it was, because they just didn't fit. How can they be relevant when they don't fit my graph? So he came up with a diet heart hypothesis. Now, hypothesis is not proven, as we know, and the diet heart hypothesis remains just that. So in 1968, he decided to prove his hypothesis. And he came up and collaborated with a chap called Ivan Frantz with the Minnesota Coronary experiment, which was done in institutions, which meant it was easy to regulate.
Control.
So it was half and half on saturated fat, half on polyunsaturated fatty acids. And of course, what happened is that those who were on the polyunsaturated fatty acids had a much higher mortality rate than those on saturated fat. So after 5 years of study, he totally disproved his own hypothesis. So what did he do? He took his name off the paper, buried the paper. It never saw the light of day until, I think you probably know this as much as me, about 2014. When
16,
it was
I think.
2016, or that sort of time anyway, when it came to light in a basement somewhere, I think. And if I recall correctly, they were able to ask Ivan Frantz, who was still alive, what happened? Why was this buried? He said the results were disappointing. They weren't what we wanted. So we buried it. Yeah. So anyway, the diet heart hypothesis, which has demonized fat and cholesterol for all these years, was disproved by its own creator. And yet we are not allowed to publicize that, really. We're certainly not allowed to shout it from the rooftops, and no doctor is allowed to do the standard of care, as the Americans call it, or the care standard over here, based on the fact that was a lie. I was invited to a conference last year by an excellent nurse who knew about my diabetes story, and she invited me as as almost like an agent provocateur. I was the only non-professional who went there. Most of them were, it was a veterans conference, and most people were there for mental health or primary care, that sort of thing. And I was sat next to some poor doctor, very nice guy, Dr. Nick something, ex-Navy doctor. And when I showed him my before and after photo, he said, oh, and that must be Ozempic. I said, no, it's Carnivore. He said, what do you mean it's Carnivore? I said, I eat only meat. What do you mean I don't eat any plants? I said, I eat only meat. I've lost all this weight. I'm sat here next to you in the health of my life. And I sort of like started preaching to him. He said, even if you're right, he said, there's nothing I can do with this because he said, it will ruin my career. I said, yeah, you're absolutely right, because you are, and I use these words, you are contractually obliged to perpetrate the lie. He didn't deny it. He just shrugged his shoulders and looked very, very sheepish and disengaged the conversation. So, I enjoyed saying that, contractually obliged to perpetrate the lie. No denial, which is, for me, that was fairly telling. So, that was
really
that deals with that.
Which is interesting because it leads into Well, you've put them as separate things, but I think you can talk about this: the Sugar Research Foundation and Harvard, but also the discrediting of John Yudkin, who is a British person, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. It fits in. Can I just say that the person to whom I owe all this research is the wonderful Dr. Kristen Kearns, who is a dentist, or who is a dentist as far as I'm aware. And I'll just make it was not a TEDx, it was a CrossFit talk she did. How big sugar influences nutrition science. So go and find that one. It's about 45 minutes long. And basically, she was so disgusted by her own profession and their support of sugar that she decided to do some research. I've got masses of stuff here, but basically, in order to validate Ansel Keys, the Sugar Research Foundation, in the shape of John Hickson, paid 3 Harvard criminals. The lovely Anthony calls them shills. But he never actually mentions their name. I was interested in finding out who they were. They were three Harvard professors, one Mark Hegstead, another guy called Stair, and then one we hear less of called McGandy. They were paid the equivalent of $50,000 in order to basically validate Ansel Keys and say that saturated fat was the driving force behind the coronary problem, and by omission or by, therefore, sugar, which should replace, and polyunsaturated fat should replace saturated fat, and which opened up the market for the Sugar Research Foundation. So that is how Harvard fell under the corrupt influence of the Sugar Research Foundation, which has now become the Sugar Association in America and the World Sugar Research Association, I think, based in London. So that was how Big Sugar basically got Harvard on its side. And as we know, Harvard are the world leaders, and everything they say is absolutely right, isn't it, Walter? So that's the story behind that. But at the roughly the same time, or a bit later, along came this excellent chap called Professor John Yudkin, a good old British, very discreet, very. He had no real ambition other than to try and help. And it was him that actually suspected that sugar was the problem, not saturated fat. And in 1971, he wrote the book Pure, White and Deadly, which became quite popular. But at that time, he was obviously a threat to Ansel Keys. Ansel Keys did his utmost to discredit John Yudkin. And it all came to a head in 1977 with the McGovern report. Now, McGovern himself was again another failure because he stood against Nixon to become the president and failed. So he had to make a name for himself. So basically, he then took on the role of being the boss of food. 1977 McGovern report. Him and his mate Ansel Keys demonised saturated fat. John Yudkin was called to give evidence in the McGovern report. Stood in front of McGovern, and McGovern dismissed him with the words, "This goes against everything that my doctor has ever taught me." And that was all he would basically, Yudkin was dismissed. Totally disillusioned. John Yudkin returned to his quiet studies back in the UK, really never to be heard of again. The McGovern report led to the infamous 1980 Dietary Guidelines from America, which have been in place pretty much ever since, with only very few modifications. And what has happened since 1980? We have seen morbid obesity, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, PCOS, endometriosis. Yeah, there is a whole list, isn't there, that's which we in the carnivore community are now familiar with. We've seen them go through the roof. And the only people who aren't questioning or critical thinking, well, no, not the only people, but one of the lead group of people who aren't critically thinking this and questioning it are our mainstream medical doctors. So, that's really the history of the train wreck, the car crash that has become the current state of affairs in world health. a state of affairs to which I very, very nearly became a victim, because I am absolutely convinced. I just turned 60 2 days ago. My mate Tommy died at the age of 59. My sister-in-law died at the age of 59. I'm fairly sure I probably would have joined the late 50s club had I not been fortunate enough to bump into Kath Moran. So thank you, Kathy Moran. So yeah, that's the story behind the sugar and John Yudkin. Anything else you want me to talk about, Steve? There's quite a lot out there, I think.
Well, yes. I'm trying to sort of do the through line of the narrative. So I would agree with you. Ansel Keys has got a lot to answer for, and also hit like I say, the results of the Minnesota Coronary experiment. John Yudkin was definitely discredited. But that did leave a little gap in the market for other things to be introduced. And I think that's one of the things also you wanted to talk about, which was seed oils, which have been introduced into the food chain.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, I've got to give the credit here to Nina Teicholz. Just shouts up her video, which I notice has got 1 million views on YouTube at the moment. And it's Nina Teicholz, Vegetable Oils, The Unknown Story, 1 million views. So it's quite well known. Yeah, she did a deep dive with the likes of Gary Fettke, I think, into the history of the seed oils. She introduced us by saying that tallow, suet, lard, and butter, and in Asian countries, coconut oil and palm oil were the original cooking mediums of choice. Oils were used as a lubricant for machinery in the Industrial Revolution. Whale oil became unavailable when we killed all the whales, so cottonseed oil became the go-to, and then corn oil. So the oils aren't stable; they are polyunsaturated fatty acids. However, the Procter & Gamble in 2010 managed to actually stabilize it to the point where they can actually produce a solid from corn oil, which was marketed in 2011 because it looked a bit like lard when it was solidified. They were in fact trying to create soap at the time, but they had this product which looked like lard, so they sold it as a lard substitute. Crisco, crystallized corn oil, so it's solidified corn oil. So that is how the vegetable oil, seed oils came into the food chain alongside margarine at the time. And then in the 1940s, they were able to find a way that they could actually stabilize the PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, enough that they could be used at room temperature as a liquid to fry in. So 1940s, the seed oils appeared. 1955, Eisenhower had a heart attack. But of course, it was the saturated fat that was to blame, not the fact that Crisco and the oils had suddenly appeared. So, how come they've managed to stay around for so long? Well, we go back to our friends Procter and Gamble again, because up until the 1920s, cardiovascular disease was rarely studied. Cardiology was a very, very minor subset of the medical science. However, with the increase in cardiovascular disease, it became quite important. In 1948, there was a Jack Benny radio show, which basically was philanthropic and got this huge cash prize to whoever was going to be the savior of the world, if you like, the health. And it was decided that the American Heart Association would receive this prize, and guess who sponsored it? Procter & Gamble. So the American Heart Association went from being a penniless bunch of cardiologists overnight to being the richest charity or not-for-profit organisation in the world, which it still is apparently. So it was Procter & Gamble who bought and paid for the American Heart Association on the understanding that they would promote seed oils as heart healthy and saturated fats as unhealthy. Follow the money, and you get to the root cause. And as we've already seen, the train wreck which followed this has basically seen a massive increase in all the above listed chronic diseases. So yeah, that's the story behind the seed oils, and why I was brought up on margarine and sunflower oil and everything else, which led to me at the age of 56 and a half being a heart attack waiting to happen. and I only just
Yep.
got away with it. So that's that one. So
Yeah, I'm
there
a
we go.
product of that as well. Yeah, because we're about the same age. I'm 61, and yeah, absolutely. I was in my 50s, so actually late 40s, early 50s. I was, the CAC score in my late 40s was 639. But anyway, right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really nice little package of fat, sugar, saturated fat, seed oils. But there are some other things that I like talking about, or I like hearing
Yep.
about, because I think there are still people out there that don't know this. So the bane of my life when I started low carb was telling people that they can skip breakfast, because there's the thing. I'm not going to steal your thunder, that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but I think you've got a couple of people you'd like to talk about
Yes.
around that. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're going to talk about the phenomenon of the breakfast cereal. And that goes back to a lady called Ellen Gould White, who was the high priestess and prophetess of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. She was visited by God with many revelations that men are horrible, lustful creatures, and they are inclined to pursue the female of the species. They're also inclined to self-abuse if they don't have much success with the female of the species, which, of course, as we know, is a sin, which, as Zoe Harcombe says, makes you blind. So yeah, again, Zoe Harcombe is the person I need to credit with this. So she decided that red meat was what drove lust, which it probably is, because it increases your sex hormones. So she opted for she pushed the vegan option. Her 12-year-old acolyte, who was her typesetter on her books, was John Harvey Kellogg of Kellogg's cornflake fame. So he was so motivated by this and was so keen not to fall victim to the red meat lust thing that he set about inventing the Kellogg's cornflake as an alternative to eating meat, with the specific design of making men so unhealthy that they would not stray into lustful sin. Battle Creek Sanitarium. My great sponsor, Dr. Kilt's, like saying, where was it all started from? Battle Creek Sanitarium. So he uses a swear word basically, which I kind of agree with, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, so John Harvey Kellogg, the story actually is told in a fantastic film called The Road to Wellville. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's
No.
you've never seen it, Steve? Go and find it. It's amazing. No. It actually tells a story of how the Battle Creek Sanitarium and the history of the Kellogg's cornflakes. Yeah, it's a great film. So John Harvey Kellogg basically invented the cornflake. It is still now the cereal of choice for many people in the mornings. Obviously, most other cereals are spin-offs of that, shredded wheat, everything. It's all grain. It's all designed to damage your hormones to the point where you won't want to procreate naturally. Yeah, so, and the Seventh-day Adventist Church is still alive and well out in the world. There is a very discreet one in the town of Taunton, which is the county town of Somerset. They are, I think, based in Loma Linda over in California. Yeah, so, and they sit on most of the dietary guidelines. They sit on the people that they have a huge influence on the dietary guidelines as well. So yeah, John Harvey Kellogg and Ellen Gould White. Yeah, they have a lot to answer for, shall we say?
Yes.
So please go and research it, everybody.
Yeah, I was grain-washed. I mean, I really did. I had porridge oats, which is another offshoot.
Yeah.
So I love what you sent me, because it does tick every box. So I'm just gonna go into the next thing. I'm not even going to try and do a smooth segue. You've mentioned Dennis Burkett and fiber. So yeah.
Oh yeah, Dennis Burkett again. Zoe Harcombe is one for that. The Fiber Man. He's also known for Burkett's lymphoma, which is probably where he should have stayed, because he was a philanthropic Irishman, Anglo-Irishman, who is based over in East Africa. And he noted that the locals, this is just purely observational, that they produce large stools on a regular basis, and they were regular in their motions as well. So he decided that they had a high fiber diet, therefore it was a good thing to have a regular stool, if you like, and a large stool. I think he said if you have small stools, you build large hospitals. So the entire fiber myth is based upon one man's observations of an East African tribe, and suddenly it's become the rule that fiber is necessary for gut health. And that was just based on an observational study. There was no randomized control trials, no meta-analysis, nothing. And in fact, exactly. It was a hunch. It was an observation. And in fact, all the actual trials since, Dr. Paul Mason, go and find him, have proved that basically if you remove fiber from the diet, your gut health does not go downhill. In fact, it becomes very, very good to the point where you don't have the IBS. I suffered from IBS all my life. I think I told you, Stephen, I'm in line now for an inguinal hernia operation because, and I put that down to all the straining that was done with the constipation, the flatulence, and the bloating when I was eating fibre. So Dennis Burkett, Fibre Man, observational study, a whole ethos, a whole legend, a whole myth has been born on that. And you would not believe the amount of people who are still telling me that I'm going to die because I'm not eating fibre. And I see it in the comments on YouTube all the time as well. Please explain to me why you don't need fibre. I haven't had fibre now for, I think I said nearly 2 years. I've had all the usual things. Much reduced motility, 3 to 4 times a week, small, easy stools. Very little flatulence, and that which I have does not smell of the rotting vegetables, which is what causes flatulence to smell, because I have no vegetables rotting in my colon. And if we want to find out if that's the truth or not, we only have to go to our great friend Lee Copus, a mutual friend of ours, who had his colon removed to be replaced by an ostomy bag, so he has no large intestine anymore. At first, when he carried on eating vegetables, they appeared in his ostomy bag exactly as they put them in his mouth, which meant that they were not dissolved by the stomach acid, they were not absorbed in the small intestine, and they were waiting to go to the colon for fermentation. In other words, rotting, which is what causes the smelly flatulence. So then he switched to meat only, and nowadays what he gets in his ostomy bag is a clear, odourless liquid, because meat is dissolved by your high pH or low pH, whichever, anyway, your very acidic hydrochloric acid in your stomach, and then it is all the nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine without any of that damn fibre getting in the way to actually stop the enzymes from getting to the nutrients. And the result is a clear, odourless liquid in his bag. So anybody who says, oh yeah, but you need fibre and meat goes to your colon to rot, no, Lee's a living proof. The absolute living proof. He's the N=1. He has really taken one for the team. And I pat my hat off to Lee because he's, despite losing his colon, he's managed to keep a brave face. And he's great fun, as anybody who knows will tell you. He was a great addition to the Great British Meetup this year, as indeed you and Rishi were, and we all had great fun.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think the thing with fibre as well is many of the people that push it, they don't get their facts right because they're anti-saturated fat, but they're saying you've got to eat fibre to get these short-chain fatty acids, which are saturated fat. So, get your stories right. Do you want saturated fat or not? And the other thing is protein. There's 4 different pathways where protein can make butyrate. So you've got the lysine pathway, leucine, valine, and you've got the glutamate pathway. So there's 4 different ways of making butyrate. You don't need fibre whatsoever. Anyway, I'm not going to get on my high horse.
I was going to say, because you I had you as beta hydroxybutyrate, but I'm afraid the pathways, the lysine and those sort of things, you kind of gone beyond my teeth.
I'm sorry, mate.
Understand things.
The reason I put my Substack out is so people can have, armed with the information if they need it. But anyway,
I totally agree. But as I say, I'm so busy being a social secretary, being an envoy to America, and being a historian that I've only got the very basic science, but the basic physiology Dr. Kills is teaching me. So there we go.
Yeah, but the thing is, the more you do this, the more you build. I mean, so in a year's time, I can imagine when somebody asks you about Dennis Burkett and fibre, you will add that. I'm sure of it. Anyway, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know.
So
Well, as long as I keep on watching you and Richard, I'm bound to pick up any occasional wee word here and there, aren't I?
Yeah, you'll be surprised. I mean, so many people push back and say that can't be true. That, so what? Yeah, wow. How can that not be true? You need the facts sometimes to just say, well, these are the things you can look up. Now, the next name, I wonder if people from the surname will guess what you're going to talk about. So Sylvester Graham.
Oh, Graham's Crackers. Yeah, he was kind of he was the forerunner of Kellogg's. I kind of added him as an afterthought because I wouldn't be doing justice to Zoe Harkin if I hadn't mentioned him. He was the inventor of Graham's Crackers for the same reason as Kellogg's invented cornflakes. I think they're still going Graham's Crackers now, aren't they? Again,
They are. Yeah.
they were
Golden
designed
Browns.
to replace meat to stop the sin of lust and the self-abuse and all those sort of things. So Zoe, in her excellent presentation, which is called What About Fibre, go and find it. She's absolutely hilarious. She mentions Sylvester Graham and Ellen Gould White and John Harvey Kellogg under the same umbrella, and then she goes on to Dennis Burkett, and she actually cuts him a bit of slack, saying that he was actually positively sane compared to the aforementioned. So Sylvester Graham. That's perfectly true. There is another name I want to chuck into the mix here, which I didn't mention to you, and that is Sir Philip Randall of 90, who first mentioned the Randall cycle in 1963. Something of which our great friend Jonathan of Carnivore Muscle and also Professor Burkett is a fan. Now, I can't get my head around the Randall cycle. I just know that it exists. But Burkett asks the kind of rhetoric question, why wasn't he better known? I think the clue is in the year 1963, because 1963 was the time when Ansel Keys was at his most rabid, ambitious, when he was trying to make a name for himself. So I strongly suspect that in all the Ansel Keys noise, Sir Philip Randall, who is again a fairly modest scientist versus a self-publicist, probably got lost in all the noise surrounding Ansel Keys. So that is my answer to Bart's rhetoric question. I don't know what you think about that, Stephen, but I think it's just worth mentioning because Sir Philip Randall is another good guy who got lost in the noise, in my view.
Yeah, I think, it doesn't fit the narrative. That's the thing, which brings us nicely onto the Bellevue study.
Oh, yeah, Bellevue study, yeah. Right. Wilhelm Stefansson and his psychic Anderson, I think his name was. They lived for many years with the Inuit. I think 13 years on and off, Stefansson said he lived for. And he was living with the Inuit and eating as they did, which was virtually without any fibre, without any vegetables. He was him, actually. I first heard use the word balanced diet because he actually said that a balanced diet was fat and protein. And that the term balanced diet has been hijacked since by those who would include carbohydrates. However, there was such interest in this lifestyle that he and Anderson undertook to do a year's control study in Bellevue, I think it's New York. It was a control study, and a year they ate meat only, or certainly no vegetable products. And they came out of that study in better health than they went in. But it's only 2 people, isn't it? What does that prove? Doesn't prove anything, does it, really? There weren't enough people to prove it. So, again, it's those who would say against us will say, yeah, it was only 2 people. It was only for a year. What's the long-term effects going to be? But, yeah, it's just another one of those little those parts of history which those who are against us would paper over and pretend never happens. Yeah. So there we go.
Well, there's over 1 million people eating carnivore, and there's hundreds of thousands of people doing success stories. And I've just a little person in the UK. I have 1,000 success stories. So that all these N equal ones are data when you add them all together. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you're right there.
And Dave Mack, as we know, who you're on with this morning, who I am on with next Friday again, number 5 for me. He has 1,200, 1,200, I think, separate stories now.
Yep.
Certainly done 1,200 interviews, over 1,000 people, four of which have been mine. I'm going for the 5th one. So at what point does n equal 1 become n equal 1,000, and it suddenly becomes a meaningful database? They will not allow us to talk about that.
As I said to Dave, I mean, between us, I mean, I when it comes to the worldwide YouTubers, I'm in the top 1.3%. So it's it's amazing that people must be interested in carnivore, mustn't they?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I want, there's a couple of things that I think we need to cover. We'll talk about your wife last, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's no problem.
I want to talk about meetups, because that's your big thing, trying to promote the UK in the States and also organising meetups. So if you could go through what you're planning, if you're all okay with that, unless they're all secret at the moment.
Yeah, just a bit of history about it, really. It's, I first discovered the idea of the meetup from my great friend Larry Allhands, Carnivore Soldier, who organised a very small one in Austin, Texas in January of 2024. Because I was very closely in contact with him then he sent me the photograph. I think it's about 15 people. A couple of recognisable faces, Lynn Tucker Carnivore and Ribeye Ranger, her husband Jim, and also one of the 2 Carnivore brothers over in the States. And that kind of put the idea of the meetup in my head. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if, but somebody else is going to organise it. I'm just a little screw in the little cog in the carnivore world. I don't really, there are much more important people out there, such as Stephen and Richard, for example, and various other people. I'm sure one of these days I'm going to get an invitation to a meetup. Well, it's true that the Carnival conference happened, but it was a bit too far from me. I couldn't really stay away overnight at the time because my wife's story is one of cancer, so I needed to be at home. And there's things like the public health collaboration, which isn't really a carnivore conference as such. It's more low carb. I was in fact in contact with a couple of local doctors from there, but we didn't see eye to eye on carnivore versus low carb. I won't name them, but one of them actually was a regular moderator on the stage for people like Anthony Chafee and Ken Berry. But anyway, that's beside the point. So yeah, the public health collaboration didn't necessarily appeal to me. It's London as well, because I'm not a great fan of travelling to London anymore if I can possibly help it. But I was still waiting for somebody to organise a party. A carnivore party, not one in which we were expected to go and sit for hours on end in lecture theatres, because your bum gets numb and your brain gets numb as well, in my view anyway. Some people can concentrate for that length of time, but I can't. And also one common complaint I heard was that people were saying, well, we don't get a chance to really talk. We get about half an hour lunch, but we don't really get a chance to talk to anybody. So I thought, well, let's have a party. Come on, somebody out there, somebody organise a party. Nobody did. So I thought, well, if nobody else is going to do it, I better add, really, hadn't I? So I had a template to go to, an excellent chap called Ashley Mulder, a rugby player who I've known for 30 years, and he used to host something called the Butley Rugby Club Ball every year, at his house, in fact, under a marquee. And I thought this is going to be an interesting template, because Ashley is also a caterer. He has the Happy Hog Race. So I approached him and I said, Ashley, can we have a party at your house like the Butley Ball? He said, no. He said, but a mile down the road now, there is a new operation called Sourdown Farm, which is much more suitable. It's got an alcohol license, it's got a bar, it's got a barn, it's got a marquee. So he put me in contact with Lucy and Dave at Sourdown. I went and visited them. Lauren came and visited them as well, Lauren Tucker. She approved it. So that became the place for the meetup. We announced it myself and Carl announced it in October of last year, 10 months in advance. And we made it happen with a little bit of help, more than a little bit of help from yourself and from Richard, because you led the final push for ticket sales in the last week. You had myself, Stephanie, Lee, Lauren, Carl. You had the committee on your programs. I think we probably cleared another 30 to 40 tickets, which gave us, I think, total ticket sales of 140 odd, which was very good, because our initial break-even figure would have been 80 to 100. So we were very, very happy with the ticket sales. We did make money, but that money is all being sent to Healing Humanity, because I'm a full-blown member of Kerry's organisation, Healing Humanity. And we felt it was and Lauren obviously is one of the stars of Healing Humanity, English stars, as is Lee Copus, as is Alex Cannon, who was on our committee but sadly died before the actual the meetup could happen. So we had quite a bit of a remembering him that day as well. Very, very sad. But Alex is the sort of character who would have wanted us to carry on the party without him, which we did. And the party went well. It was I gave myself a 7 out of 10. I misjudged the timing of the speeches and how long it would take in between the intervals to try and get people seated again. So we actually carried on longer into the afternoon with a Q&A session than I wanted to, because I wanted to really get the Q&As out of the way before lunch was served. In the end, lunch was a bit hurried because of that. And also the food service was not well thought out. So in the end, I gave myself a 7 out of 10. But most people, I think, went away.
They loved it.
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah.
Well, not every. We had a bit of feedback about the food service and a couple of other things. I got a bit over distressed, and I was found wandering outside, looking not particularly happy by the excellent Louise Benning, who is an ambassador for the Noakes Foundation over in South Africa, and she told me to. She is South African herself, and she told me to come and man up, George. She said, be African, be African. Don't be British about this. And she said, just take it on the chin and get on with it, as Doug Reynolds would. So yeah, I've looked up Doug Reynolds, and yeah, he's fairly good South African. So a big shout out to Louise Benning, who is not only the ambassador for the Noakes Foundation for South Africa, but she's also now an ambassador for the Public Health Collaboration here in this country as well. And yeah, just to give her another big shout out, she's actually organising a Cape Town meetup on September the 27th, and she's organising it from Basingstoke or Andover, one of the two, at the end of the A303. So she's actually organising the meetup in Cape Town on September the 27th from Britain. So fair play to Louise. Louise has become one of my very good friends in the carnivore world now, and I have just nothing but absolute admiration for that girl. And one day we will have her speaking in her own right. So yeah, 7 out of 10, but it was enough encouragement that we're going again. The committee has been set up, pretty much the same committee as last time, and we've now booked Sourdown for a repeat attempt, and that I can now announce pretty much exclusively. I have announced it on my own very small channel, so is Carl on his slightly bigger channel, but it will be Saturday the 13th of June of next year.
Right.
It will be again on a weekend when Lucy is doing a public night on the Friday. Those of you who were there this year, went to the public night, about 30 of us, will recall how Ashley did the hog roast for us on the public night, and he invented the carnivore burger at Stephen's behest, actually, because in Ashley's usual burgers he does include seasoning, but on the lead up to the event, Steve said, "Oh, I'm no good with seasoning," so Ashley then invented the carnivore burger, which is pure beef and salt. The feedback from that was it's pretty good, but it might have been a bit dry. So what we're going to do next year is we're going to use the pure beef and salt, but he's going to add fat, beef fat into it to make it a bit juicier. But they were huge. I think they were 7 ounces each, and they went down very well. So that will be the carnivore burger will be returning next year at the meetup. Saturday the 13th of June will be the official ticketed meetup. We will have an informal gathering at Sourdown the night before. I'm trying to convince Lucy that she needs to book Ashley again, but she says she doesn't plan that far in advance. If she doesn't, then the only thing we can do is use the camping field, and there will be some campers there because we have a few, and then we'll basically set up a barbecue for ourselves, and we can bring our own meats, and I will provide the barbecue, and we'll we'll just have a little barbecue up in the field there, out of the way.
When will people be able to get tickets then?
Very good question. We are talking once again 9 months away. We think we went a bit early this year because we went on May the 1st for August the 2nd. And there was kind of a lack of sense of urgency. And one very funny story I've got, my great friend Ziggy Farnell, Carnivore camper from Weston-super-Mare, who I do quite a bit of walking and talking with, which goes out on her channel. She was so keen that she bought her tickets on May the 1st, her and her husband. By the time August 2nd came around, she completely forgot about it. So she didn't turn up. And I didn't notice she wasn't there until about lunchtime. So it's far too late to tell her. But then she and I went out for a day out with her husband and my wife. And she said, "Oh, damn," she said, "I was so looking forward to that." And I completely forgot about it. So, yeah, I would suggest that probably next year it's June the 13th. So what we might do is possibly, we haven't decided this is just me thinking out loud now, Steve, to be honest with you. And that's it. We might leave it a bit later than sort of 3 months in advance, maybe 6 weeks in advance.
Right, okay.
But that's yet to be decided. Possibly May the 1st again this year might be an idea, because then that will give people a bit more of a sense of urgency. And those who do buy it on May the 1st, hopefully by June the 13th, won't have forgotten that they're supposed to be at Sourdown Farm. So, yeah, that's a possible idea, but we'll have to get that voted through by the committee. The committee consists of 7 people, so we do have a voting pattern on there. Yeah, but
you mentioned
Saturday
some other
the 13th.
thing, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have another minor event lined up, which we believe is going to happen. We can't see anything necessarily stopping it unless people aren't interested, and that is not the full committee from the meetup, but Lauren Tucker, who we all know, I think, and myself. We live not far from each other, not far from Ashley. This is my brother's idea, actually, because he's got a whole leg of venison in his freezer and he doesn't know what to do with it. So I said, well, let's make it the basis for a meetup. He said, that's a good idea. So I said to Ashley, I said, any chance of you getting venison, having a wild game meetup in November, because that's at the height of the game season.
Right.
So we've basically settled upon a 3-course meal, if it happens, when it happens, which will be a charcuterie to begin with, plate. Hopefully we can get some wild boar sausage, that sort of thing. Then Ashley will be serving up venison and half a pheasant each as the main course. And then afterwards there will be, because we're in Somerset, there will be some very good local cheddar cheese available for those who want it. Yeah. Although Ashley has warned that in his own experience that by the time people have feasted on his meats and his service, that often that the cheese doesn't go down too well. So he said he will manage the cheese very carefully. Ashley's very much on board. It's not really appropriate to go back to Sourdown because that's more of a summer venue. But again, good old Ashley. He said, we'll go to Keyneston Mandeville Village Hall, which is about 2 miles from Sourdown, about a mile from Ashley's house. Myself and Lauren are now in negotiations with Keyneston Mandeville Village Hall. We're supposed to be going to go and visit on September the 18th to check it out, but it looks perfect, and Ashley we trust anyway.
What's the date, George? Right,
so the date that we have penned in is November the 15th, which is about a week before Phil Escott's retreat in Spain, so those who are really keen can come to this. I must emphasize that it is a game, it's a wild game meetup. So there won't be any beef, there won't be any lamb, there won't be a hog roast. It will be venison and pheasant. So it really is kind of niche. The hall itself will hold up to 100 seated. We think that we need 50 people to sign up for it in order to make it financially viable. On Monday, myself and the committee, there will be a panel show, which will be Stephanie Taylor, the wonderful Stephanie, Lauren Tucker, Carl Day and myself. We will be focusing on the Great British Meetup. However, we will also be introducing the idea of the smaller meetup in a village hall on November the 15th. Carl will be creating a waiting list, a place where you can go on the waiting list. Those people who are interested. If we can raise 50 odd names before the end of September, when we need to book the hall and probably pay for it, then we will definitely go ahead. If people aren't prepared to travel at that time of the year, which is understandable, or if people aren't really interested in trying wild venison and wild pheasant, if it doesn't appeal to them, then nothing is set in stone as yet. But the date is there, and we are very, very hopeful that it will appeal to enough people to make it financially viable. So have a
I
think
think
about it,
will.
folks, and watch us at 7 p.m. on Monday evening. That doesn't tread on your toes at all, does it, Stephen?
No.
7 p.m. No, because you're 7 p.m. on a Sunday, aren't you?
We are.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. 7 p.m. on a Sunday. Yeah, and I'm 6 p.m. on a Sunday, by the way. So I run directly into Stephen's, and I do notice that Jonathan Carnivore Muscle does join us and go straight on to Stephen and Richard afterwards, which is very good of him. Watch us 7 p.m. on Monday. Carl will come up with how you can get on the waiting list, how you can express interest, and hopefully, we got two meetups coming up. We got the smaller winter meetup coming up in November 15th, and then we've got the big one, the Great British Meetup, take 2, on June the 13th next year. And I can say this because I can't set this in stone. I can't make any promises. However, I am studying under Dr. Kilks. Dr. Kilks and myself have become pretty good friends now. And he wants to come to the Great British Meetup next year. And I understand from Alia that he's actually going to an event organised by Richard in June, which might be the Carnivore Conference. You probably know more about these things than me, Stephen, but we're not. But thankfully, we've gone a week early. We haven't trodden on his toes. And Ali has said, basically, I'm going to make sure Dr. Kilt spends most of his June in the UK this year, so he can get around to these places. There's a week, I think, between the events, and I've offered to give him the tour of Somerset, which includes the village of Cheddar, Wookey Hole, the Glastonbury Tour and Abbey, Wells Cathedral, the Fleet Air Arm Museum, because he's a pilot, which I think will appeal to him. And of course, I also do a cross-border raid to Stonehenge in Wiltshire. So I'm hoping that I've dangled enough bait in front of Dr. Kiltz's nose for him to come and spend the week here in Somerset before he moves on to the next event, which I believe is Richard's, the Carnival Conference. I suspect. I don't know that. I'll let Richard announce that for himself.
Yes. Let's move on swiftly then to the last subject.
The other person that I'm speaking to on a regular basis now is Kerry. And Kerry says, I want to come to that event, George, but I've got to speak to Jen and get permission from Jen. But Kerry does want to come, but again, no guarantees. So that's the update. We'll move on.
And behind every great man, there is a great woman. So I'd like to finish talking about your wife and what she's up to. She's a cancer sufferer and hyper-carnivore. So you mentioned that you'd be happy to go through that. So
we can do, but we're going to have to come back in that case, Stephen, another time, because I've just come back from Wyoming, which will probably be actually a whole thing in its own right. But yeah, we'll talk about Wyoming another time if
do that as a part 2, shall we?
Yeah, we'll do that as a part 2. That was great because I will be helping to organise the Rendezvous City Riverton Beef Roundup next year, which had to be cancelled. But I can confirm that will be happening next year. I will be going, and I hope to lead a UK delegation, which will include, nice segue, my wife, Lainey, who is a cancer sufferer. Okay, so
brilliant.
In 2022, in September 22, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, which came on really quite suddenly. We don't know why. She lost a lot of weight, which was the first thing, but every scan was clear, and then suddenly there was a 5x5 centimetre tumour there. So she went through the usual routine of poison, cut, burn, in other words, chemotherapy, in which she lost all her hair, the cut, which was a mastectomy, and then the burn, which was the radiotherapy. Her hair grew back eventually. Most of the people that we knew who went through the same thing are now back at work. But we had a bit of a kick in the sting in the tail, because it came through that Paget's nipple disease was discovered by the biopsy on the removed tissue, which is a precursor of metastatic Paget's bone cancer. So she is now registered disabled because she has to have she's been on antibiotics for a further 2 years. She's just coming off them, in fact, now, because they can, not antibiotics, chemo for another 2 years. She is also has to have intravenous bone infusion of bisphosphate, and she's had that. One of the very, very uncommon side effects of it is one which she got, as she said, it can only happen to her. So she got osteonecrosis of the jaw, which means osteo of the bone, necrosis, death. So her jawbone is dying. So she has lost 5 or more teeth now. She can't say the word 66, and as she did the raffle at the Great British Meetup, and she had to call out the number 66, then Carl picks up on that. So yeah, please don't ask Lainey to ever do the raffle when it's 66 again. It doesn't really work with her teeth. However, Lainey is aware of me and Carnivore, and she is certainly aware of the cancer factor. She knows exactly who Otto Warburg was. She knows about the Otto Warburg effect. She knows the work of Professor Thomas Seyfried very well. She is well aware of the fact that cancer feeds on glucose. Therefore, one of the quickest ways of starving cancer is not putting in any exogenous glucose into your body. Hence, she has gone carnivore. So Lainey is now very much part of the carnivore community. As we know, Otto Warburg didn't know about glutamine, but that's a story for another matter. However, she does believe that carnivore is not the be-all and end-all. It is not the solution. It is a complementary treatment for the standard solution. So she says, whatever they throw at me, I will take. She's actually down for a trial from a company called Stemline, which she's being assessed for at the moment, which we're hoping it goes ahead, which sounds like it should be a stem cell treatment. So but we've, and again, working with our great friend Stephanie Taylor, who has told her story to you as well, Stephen, I won't refer to, but she is a cancer sufferer as well. They and she has now chosen the chemo route as well, with carnivore as a complement. So what we come up with is a little mantra, which is chemo fights cancer, but carnivore fights chemo. Because one thing that's that both Lainey and Stephanie have in common is they have the energy levels and the outward health of their life. They both are absolutely full of energy, as you yourself can testify from the Great British Meetup, because you saw Stephanie's speech.
She was amazing.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
And you also saw my wife run the raffle. Would you say that either of those two were undergoing chemotherapy? No, of course you wouldn't.
No, you'd never know.
So I think that we are perfectly justified in saying that chemo fights cancer, but carnivore fights chemo.
Fights chemo. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, so, I'm going to steal that, of course.
Good, and
but credit you. As you know, I do with Stephanie.
You are not stealing it. I'm giving it to you to spread the word, because there are those amongst us who will say, "Hey, you don't need chemo because carnivore starves cancer." But Stephanie was the N=1, and she decided that because that she tried it without chemo, the cancer came back. So she has gone down the route of chemo combined with carnivore, and it seems to be working fairly well for her. It's certainly working very well for my wife Lainey. Chuck in another 2 people on top of that. Rob, who was at the meetup, ex-Raw Core Signals, a former comrade of mine, in other words, I think stage 4 liver cancer. Again, you would not suspect it. He had a really good time, joined in. And as I said, Ziggy Farnell, who famously didn't make it to the meetup. Her husband, Steve, in January 24 was given a few months to live with liver cancer. Ziggy went on in January 24, did a very tearful YouTube. Shortly after the Great British Meetup this year, we spent a day in Burnham-on-Sea with Steve and Ziggy. And we were very silly. We went and played on the children's roundabouts and swung on the children's swings. Steve got stuck in. This is a man who was given 3 months to live back in January of 2024. What has happened since he's gone carnivore is the cancer has done nothing. It has neither regressed nor has it progressed. It has gone into a state of inertia. Basically, it's gone to sleep. And his energy levels are such that he can deal with Ziggy. They're doing up a camper van, and they like to go off on camper van holiday. So considering that we are now nearly 2 years down the line since he was given a couple of months to live, he was looking incredibly sprightly, incredibly healthy at the age of 67 when we went and played on the swings with him. So there's 4 stories there. 4 separate stories.
Absolutely.
Again,
Yeah.
when does this amount of data suddenly become significant? Who knows? A long time
Well, it's
before
significant to you
yeah,
right now. It matters now. That's the
it
thing.
does, absolutely. Yeah, that's very true.
Right. Okay. So many people will know that this is possibly one of the longest interviews I've done, but
Well,
it had
it's
a
only
lot
an hour
of...
and 4. It's only an hour and 14, Steve. I've done a lot longer than this. As I said, when
I know
DC
you
got
have.
going, we had to split it down into 2 1-hour sections. So,
Yeah.
so
But I'm going to wish you a good evening, and
absolutely,
I
Steve,
think
no
we
worries.
should do another meetup or one other thing at some
Yeah,
point.
if seriously, I mean, I had a fabulous time over in Wyoming. I will be telling it, but I've told it on Facebook in magazine form. But yeah, anytime you want to talk about it, I'll tell you what, we'll talk about it nearer the time, because I will be helping Tyler to organise it next year. I'm hoping to take a UK delegation with me. So yeah, probably next year would be a more appropriate time to talk about Wyoming and the Beef City, the Rendezvous City Beef Roundup for 2026.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, so
Brilliant.
On that note, we'll say good night. Do you want me to hang on for an after show party, or should we just bail out?
Well, you need to stay in the studio, but I'm going to stop the recording and just say
no worries,
thank you to thank you for everyone to watch, and thank you for doing it, George.
Thank you. Cheers. Good night, everybody.